Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with some thoughts on elevated music and Marshmallow Rice Krispie treats. Now, let's just be clear about one thing. By elevated music, I don't mean elevator music. That's different. We're talking about music that has somehow been made superior. We hear the term used a lot, elevated taste, elevated culture, elevated musical substance. What does it mean when something's elevated? I was thinking about it really because, it isn't obvious. We use these bits of jargon, and we use them very knowingly, and we use it to sound smart and to impress other people and to display our snob credentials. But we don't often define our terms. And so I thought the idea of being elevated, well, it struck me. It struck me this way. Here we go. Marshmallow Rice Krispie treats. I love Marshmallow Rice Krispie treats. Now, do you know the basic Marshmallow Rice Krispie treat? You take like a jar of marshmallow fluff, that fabulous white marshmallow goopy substance, and you mix it with Rice Krispie cereal, and you spread it out on a pan, and you let it dry out. You sort of carve it up, and voila, Marshmallow Rice Krispie treats. One of the, lovely benefits of the American childhood with the, snack food and processed food military industrial complex. Love it. Anyway, I was riding on the train back from my job in New York on Amtrak. And Amtrak, in case you didn't know, the American National Railway, which is constantly going bankrupt and whatnot, they have a cafe car. And the food isn't bad. It's really not. They have a wide selection of stuff. They revamped the whole menu like a couple decades ago. I don't know how much it's changed since, but you can get salads, you can get a cheese plate. All the cheese sort of tastes the same, but yeah, it's a nice effort, right? The crackers are different. And they have, the mac and cheese is not bad. Hot dogs, burgers, all the usual stuff. And one of the things they had for dessert was a Rice Krispie treat. And I'm always a sucker for trying, interesting junk food, as you can probably tell by looking at me. And so I purchased this. Here it is. The Sweet Street Chewy Marshmallow. Sweet Street Chewy Marshmallow. It's called a Chewy Marshmallow. It's non-GMO, so it pushes all the right politically correct buttons. Let me say straight out that I am 100% in favor of genetically modified organisms. I think we should genetically modify the crap out of everything we can, but that's me. I don't care about the GMO part. But here's the thing. This is what got me. Chewy marshmallow with brown butter and sea salt. Now, whether the salt comes from the sea or not is irrelevant. Salt is salt. Sodium chloride is sodium chloride. One man's sodium is the same as anyone else's sodium. The sodium on Baxia is the same as the sodium here on planet Earth. So that didn't get me either. But the brown butter, that got me. Because brown butter is yummy. You cook the butter just enough to turn it brown, but that means the sugars in it caramelize, and it has this wonderful, fabulous, deep, rich flavor. And they put just enough in here to give it a special zing. And they elevated the Chewy Marshmallow Rice Krispie treat. It became a gourmet snack sensation. I immediately came home. I ordered a whole case of them. I take them into work with me. I give them away to friends. These are good. These are really, really good. And so I thought, is not that what composers often do in the musical business, right? They take something, a theme, something very simple, and they make something of it unexpected, something that allows it to still be recognizably itself, but somehow in a new and improved state, or turning something very simple into something that you would never expect it becoming. A simple tune, a simple theme. That was the program behind the entire romantic nationalist awakening that happened in the second half of the 19th century. Composers like Dvorak, they would take a simple melody or a rhythm or a something, and they would build it into a symphony, into something larger, bolder, grander, really fabulous. Bruckner in his Eighth Symphony. It's the largest symphony ever based on a grace note. You know what a grace note is? A grace note is a little note that comes before the beat, like da-da. The da and the is the grace note. And it's really kind of amazing. Every single theme in that symphony is based on that idea. The opening theme, ba-dum, 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 ba-da-dum. It's also called an upbeat if you're not gracing it, and if it's an actual time thing. So, I mean, there you go. And then the scherzo, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. That's the theme. Ba-ba-da-da-da-da-ba-dum, ba-ba-ba. The opening of the adagio is chum-chum, chum-chum-chum, that rhythm. And the finale is ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. You know, it permeates the whole symphony. Just that teeny, teeny, teeny microscopic rhythmic, millisecond motive, and he creates an hour and 30-minute long monstrosity out of it. It's extraordinary. It's been elevated. Now, elevated doesn't always mean something gets bigger. It doesn't. I mean, it can be preserved in its relative form, and it depends what's being elevated. For example, one of the criticisms often aimed at Mahler was that he was vulgar, that he used quotidian ideas. But what elevated them was the context in which they're placed. They're used for the purpose of injecting a shocking note of either vulgarity or parody or sardonicism or something into an otherwise noble context. There's that idea of elevating the material. And in that case, it's not the material that's being elevated, it's the entire conception of the work, which is placed in an entirely new contextual frame by using some of these rather more primitive or refractory elements. I mean, that's one way. Another way to do elevating. Another way to elevate things, which is just fascinating to me, was the movement known as primitivism. Stravinsky, The Rite of Spring, Verres, Arcana, Bartók's The Miraculous Mandarin. I mean, in those cases, you were dealing with folk music, very simple folk elements, many of which were unchanged, and first of all, subjecting them to extraordinary complex rhythmic operations and harmonic operations, and putting them in a context of just an enormous and sophisticated instrumental ensemble. I mean, the more primitivist the music is, the more avant-garde the musical setting tends to be. It's a wonderful contrast. It really is. And it elevates the material, transforms it. I mean, in that case, when we talk about elevation, it's almost a synonym for a transformation of some kind, right? I mean, that's really what's going on. And we see throughout music history composers doing similar things, taking these very simple objects and placing them in utterly fantastical settings and making something wonderful and new out of them, elevating them in a sense. One of the most obvious musical forms for the elevation process, we might call the elevator process, is the theme and variations, because you have the first variation, the second variation, and you're moving up the various floors to the top floor. Then you end with the penthouse, usually a fugue or something like that at the end. Themes and variations are wonderful ways to show how composers elevate their material. I mean, think of the Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star tune. Excuse me. The Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star tune, which Mozart knew as À vous dirai-je maman, the French folk song. He used it as a set of piano variations. Dohnányi created his fabulous variations on a nursery tune for piano and orchestra, which goes about as far as you can with that particular theme. There are many, many themes that composers share and which they elevate in their own ways. The famous Paganini theme, bum ba da 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 dum ba da 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 dum ba da 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 dum bum, which is the source of variations for Lutoslawski and Rachmaninoff and Boris Blacher and Brahms and you name it. The Paganini theme was a source of elevated musical treatment. These are just little thoughts that I was having as I was munching on my fabulous Rice Krispie treat. Now, is it possible to elevate things pointlessly? Yes. Some things are not really objects of elevation, I think. I mean, we could argue about it. I mean, I remember a bazillion years ago seeing an advertisement during the holiday season for Johnston's No Roach insecticide in the bright green and red Christmas package. Now, I don't care how you package Johnston's No Roach. You are not going to make insecticide a lovely holiday gift. That is inappropriate elevation, in my view. And I do have an example of it right here. I was in Italy recently, visiting my sister in Milano. And we have a hotel that we stayed in regularly. It's a very nice hotel. It was called the Carlisle Brera. It's on Corso Garibaldi, right around the corner from the arena there. And its name changed. When we went back, it was a different hotel. All the same people were there, but they changed the name and they remodeled everything, which means they made it smaller. They chopped all the rooms in half and charged the same price. You know how that goes, right? It became the Urban Hive. Isn't that a resonant name? Oh, I'm staying in the Urban Hive. It's like the Frank Herbert novel, Hellstrom's Hive. I was waiting for some, insectoid creature to come and stun me and, use me for spare parts or something. It was very, very strange. Anyway, so we're there in the Urban Hive, and it's a very politically correct, woke kind of place where everything is done to reduce your carbon footprint. The only nice thing about it was that the bathrooms were bigger than the sleeping quarters. Great bathrooms. But, anyway, one of the things you got when you were there was the official Urban Hive pencil. They're elevating the pencil. Now, this pencil is as elevated as a pencil gets. It's called Perpetua, the pencil, and it has a description of what it is. Perpetua is different from others pencil. Okay, so the English wasn't translated too well. Is different from others pencil made with wit, without the H, recycled graphite, an industrial waste product. It is non-toxic. It doesn't dirty your hands. If it falls on the floor, it doesn't break. It can be sharpened, but even writes when blunt or cut in half. It has its very own colored eraser. Oh, yeah, it does. It's here at the back. Okay. It feels sort of different. Okay. This is Perpetua, the first pencil made from recycled graphite, made in Italy, and like all Alicia products, patented. Okay, that's nice to know. So they have elevated the pencil. Did anybody care? Did the pencil need to be elevated? Were we all desperately waiting for the elevated pencil? Now that the pencil has been elevated, are we happier because of it? Are we rushing about telling all of our friends about the elevated pencil? I would guess not. So there are some things you can elevate and some things where the process itself is sort of, let's just say kind of pointless or too much of a good thing, or it's trying to make our grand statement where there isn't one to make, where nothing is appropriate to the method is not appropriate to the material, let's put it that way. And that is something that we, with our elevated taste, are always discussing and looking to determine. But in general, I think the analogy to our fabulous Rice Krispie treat with brown butter and sea salt is quite applicable to a lot of what the best composers do, taking simple things and doing absolutely amazing and remarkable things with them, and thus elevating them to another level or a sphere or a something, or whatever you want to call it. I think it's fun to think about it, and I hope you do too. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.